Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Flying Cat Marketing Interview Series. Today, I'm really excited to have Tara Panu on, who's VP of Marketing at VoiceFlow. And today, we're going to be talking about conducting primary customer research like a product marketer, which is, I think, a huge pain point of a lot of people, or it will be a huge pain point when they realize that they need to do this. um, thanks for joining me today, Tara. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. I love this topic. So excited to dive right in.
Yeah, I saw you were writing about it on LinkedIn, and that's when it caught my eye because you had your entire website, uh, the copy on your website written based on all of these customer interviews. So let's dive
Mhm.
into actually your background because I know you come from a background of product marketing. How has
Mhm.
that influenced your perspective as a VP of marketing?
Yeah, I think all in all, looking back at how I got here, I think it's completely rooted in I think my absolute passion and quite obsession for understanding customers deeply, and really putting them at the heart and at the center of everything that I do. I was very fortunate early in my career. Interesting to get, before getting into product marketing, I actually started my marketing career in customer marketing and part of a customer experience team at Jive Software. And that really, I think, put me right in where I was managing our customer advocates and the community. And so right away, I think that the experience of actually understanding what made them so successful, and then how do you tie stories and how do you work with the sales team, and you really get to understand their journey and why they became so successful with the product. And as you know, happy customers buy more. So I was really fascinated about understanding the journey to that point, and then also being able to then work with the sales team and other prospective customers when they had a particular objection or they had, a pain point, being able to tie in, hey, this person, this customer went through the exact same thing, and being able to relate stories. So it became this fascination for storytelling and across the entire prospects and customers journey. And that got me into my next role within product marketing, actually. And so being able to work with sales team and first really understand how to actually put a go-to-market strategy together. And again, very deeply rooted in customer research, and then figuring out what customer segments to go after that are going to get us to, companies' revenue goals. And then, doing the actual work of like researching, understanding, and then actually coming up with how do we position ourselves to those sets of customers, and then actually come up with the messaging. So, and then the last part of the journey that led me to here in leading a marketing team is actually, you do all this stuff, you create that kind of foundation, and then you have to figure out how do you actually distribute and create demand, right? And create that awareness for your target customers. So it's been an awesome start of the journey, but I think it kind of sums up in understanding customers deeply, and really as a marketer thinking about the entire journey. And that regardless of the specialty, whether it's product marketing or demand gen, all those things go, tied together. So I think as just qualities and a really great marketer is just, I think it's rooted in understanding customers. Yeah.
It sounds like in all of these places that you have worked at, the customer has been a really important part of the company. And
Yeah.
it's not always that way. So I think you've been pretty lucky. When you joined
Mhm.
VoiceFlow, were they already that way? And you said, okay, great, I'm going to fit into this company because they care so much about the customer. Or were you open to a company that maybe wasn't that way yet and you said, "Okay, yes, I have a lot of work to do. We're gonna be able to transform this from the inside out," or what was that like?
Yeah, I think the first, of course, they have an amazing product, amazing people. But really, what got me excited was their passion for customers. And I think that just curiosity to learn. It became really fascinating and enticing for me to come in and feel that I can make that impact, and I can take, and I was going to learn so much. The interesting part about joining at VoiceFlow is they had a lot of growth from at the user level, right? And people were obsessed with the product. They loved the product. And I think what I got really excited about it was they started to see a lot of traction within a particular segment, and they were going through this kind of inflection point and transition point. And I think for me, I knew that that was the the point and the I think the milestone within a company, and like I think the moment that I thought I could thrive in, where I could go back to my roots and really kind of get to build that from the ground up, where I'm coming in of just really trying to understand, hey, we're starting to see momentum in a certain area. Why is that? So it kind of gets me back into like the fundamentals of actually going out and seeking that, working with the sales team, working with our customer success team, talking to the customers, and then figuring out the why, and then be able to tie that back. And we went through an entire, reposition of the company. And now we're in that, foundation building mode where we're just kind of executing against that strategy. And it's a great feeling when already they had such I think, a passion and alignment, and a customer centricity, quality about the company. But it's really amazing when you make that click. All of a sudden, your messaging is resonating. The conversations change with our customers, and more customers are wanting to speak out more and share their story. You can feel the momentum. And so it's been an exciting, I've been there now about 8 months. It's been really rewarding and fulfilling to see that transition in the last 8 months.
That is such an exciting thing when you say, "Okay, we're finally we're finally getting there. It's finally
Yeah.
resonating." I
Yeah.
know that it's important to continuously talk to customers, but obviously there's a bit of an onboarding period where you're trying to figure out the strategy, you're figuring out the messaging. How long would you say, did you spend purely just talking to customers, before you started coming up with a strategy?
Yeah, great. So I think when I came in, a lot of it was, of course, understanding the team, getting to know the people inside the business. But and I was very clear when I interviewed that I wanted to spend the first 30 days just listening, and not only, of course, like internally, but that I was, going on 5 sales calls a week and just listening, just silent observer, and then I absolutely in the first 30 days I had a goal of like talking to at least like 50 customers, as well as, prospective customers or anybody that felt and looked like, our target audience. So I put that personal goal on myself to do
You said
that. So
50?
about
50 a week.
50. Oh no, 50 in that month was like
Oh, okay, I
my,
was like, "What?"
oh, no, no, no. I wouldn't sleep, but I would love that. But I try to put some parameters where I wanted. It was very important to me that that first 30 days before even thinking about strategy or anything was just listening. And I think that that's really important because ultimately I look back at it now, the tactic becomes super, super clear and easy when you really understand the customers deeply. And the other thing too for us was, we were going through this transition about how are we repositioning the company and really resonating. We were getting a lot of traction within enterprise. And so we had to lead with that story. And so I think for me, yeah, again, the first 30 days were all about listening. And then, the next 30 days was actually kind of uh, absorbing and figuring out and like reporting back on here are some of the themes and commonalities and trends that I'm seeing through these interviews. And actually, very quickly, it was awesome to see within I think the first 90 days actually delivering a draft of here is like our ideal customer profile after talking to this many existing customers as well as people that look like that could be a potential customer in the future. And these are like the qualities. It was fascinating to see where we thought we could win and it looked like it actually was something different and it became even more focused. And so being able to deliver that and have that discussion internally was an incredible experience, but also a great way to also, as someone that was new coming in, create alignment and then also create that kind of those relationships early on that hey, if it's really important that we anchor and have that true understanding as as a leadership team on this. And if that happens, then, the work around coming up with like the strategy to support that and the execution plan to support that can come right after. But oftentimes when you try to go in thinking like how are you going to change a strategy, it's like the wrong way to think about it. It's like it needs to be a personal mission to really understand who is like the ideal customer for that particular time period. As you can positioning can change, but it's really important to understand like the company goals for, that year and like, how are we going to get there? And then where are we going to make our bets, right? And then that also starts with just being super focused and disciplined on, hey, our target audience can evolve over time, but in order for us to really hit those, company goals, it's important that the entire business, not just sales, not just marketing, but the entire business is really aligned on that ideal customer.
So I have so many questions. I'm going to start with one quick one. You said
Yeah.
that you sat on a bunch of sales calls. Do you think that there's a difference between sitting in on a sales calls versus listening to recordings of sales calls?
Mhm. I think so. I think it was I was very lucky. I mean, our sales reps are unique in that I was actually fascinated by they were viewed as like subject matter experts in the space, which was really interesting. Um I think you just I don't know, there's something of being there live and you pick up on and you also, I used to talk with the rep right before the call and just, they gave a little bit of context as to you were some of like the previous discussions. You different when you're there live. And that actually I happened to be allowed to ask questions because I think I was approaching it like really seeking to understand. And so I think the rep saw like a value added. Hey, sometimes when you're listening onto a call, the rep has a different, objective, right? But sometimes as a marketer, you kind of pick up on like, "Oh, no, actually, I wanna probe a little bit more about what they really meant by that, and can you clarify what you meant by that, or what's like, what's less than ideal about what you just described?" Because for me, what I was listening for was, like, the pain, right? The
Yeah.
real, like, pain points, and not I'm detached from, like, the commercial outcome and everything like that, so I think, um I think listening to calls, if you have it, hey, better than nothing. So I would say if you have access to that at a very minimum, you should be, and it helps also not only understand what the customer or the prospect is saying, but also how how like the process actually works. So that actually helped me understand how our sellers approach those types of conversations, what were typical objections. So already I'm starting to think, okay, hey, I'm hearing common things happen call over call. How do we, how does marketing really help educate them about this
Yeah.
particular topic? That way we can make those calls a lot more effective and a lot more, consultative. And it was great for me because it gave me a good follow-up after where it's like, hey, I actually would love, I didn't want to, derail the call, but I actually would really love to talk to that prospect and like dive a little bit more about this particular topic. Can you help? Would you mind like setting up a 15-minute interview or a follow-up? And they were happy to because they're like, again, I'm not in sales. And I'm new, I use like I'm new card, I'm here just to learn. And so when you create that kind of environment where there's like collaboration and there's like that willingness, it makes this process. And I think even the prospect feels it that, hey, we are a company that wants to learn as much as possible and add value as much as we can, but also we want to listen. And so I think that really resonates with prospects. At the end of the day, people buy from people. And so when you create that, create that kind of environment. You just have to just capitalize on the opportunity. If they want to share more, you have to jump on that, right? Yeah.
What is the job title of the person that you guys are trying to sell to, or what level are
Y-
they of
y-
seniority?
Yeah. So interesting. So we're a collaborative design platform for conversational AI teams that are building voice and chat assistants. And there's been this emergence, but the unique and what got me really, really, really excited about this company is like this emergence of a new role called a conversation designer. So this is, as you can imagine, when you think about design disciplines and the growth of the UX designer, um, this role is probably a few years old in terms of like actually being called a conversation designer. So they're the primary kind of users, but I think the opportunity was that it's not a very, I think, well understood role out in the market. And also the practice of conversation design is still to be defined, which is like a fantastic opportunity as a marketer, right? To be able to evangelize it, to legitimize the practice. And that actually is becoming like our number one objective is legitimizing the conversation design practice within like our ICP. So that's a really great, I think, forcing function and getting everybody aligned to that objective. So that's who we typically sell to, and they can vary. And I think a lot what we've uncovered through a lot of the customer research that no, a conversation designer in company A looks very different in company B, and a lot of that has to do with the level of maturity of the organization, which also becomes that's how you really whittle down and get even more granular around our ideal customers, right? Is like who will have the most desire and will get the most value out of what we can provide today that can absolutely change tomorrow. But then that helps like get us really focused on we should be focusing on companies at this maturity level because that's where we can capture them. It resonates. They prioritize the problem. They understand the problem. So it's not a huge uplift to try to convince them of it. So it's a lot easier to have the conversation. But then that opened up my mind into, oh my gosh, like we have to create a lot more awareness and create that mind share to like talk about the problem for the other subset, the majority of the market that's still in the unaware phase. So that's just again, customer research really uncovers a lot where it no two conversations are the same, but you really start to pick up on um, the criteria, right? And also just like what makes a good fit for VoiceFlow today could totally look different tomorrow. But it's like really important to identify like the today part, right? Because like you have to start somewhere.
So it sounds like this conversation designer is somebody who probably wears a lot of hats, depending, of course, on the maturity of the organization, like you said. Uh, in B2B, it's so hard to find the amount of volume of people that you need to talk to. You said 50 customers. So that means, or not 50 customers per se, but 50 people who are in that role. Um, how do you find these people to talk to and how do you convince them to talk to you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I a lot of LinkedIn stalking. And it also is a great way because I understood where did these people where do they go, right? Where do they what channels are they very active in? So I think for me it really started with actually going on LinkedIn and doing my own research. And a lot of this was actually while I was interviewing with the company and just pulling profiles. I saw a lot of people are very active. So I just started creeping more and like, what are the things that they're talking about on like on LinkedIn? So I think just kind of pulling a list. I felt like, I was like, wow, this is really what I really appreciate the resilience of a salesperson because they're having to do this. They're doing a lot of like research on the person. So a lot of it for me was starting like going and doing like a LinkedIn kind of search. That gave me some indication also like how prevalent is this role or job title right now. And then pulling like a list and then also looking at connections. And so a lot of it, if it was connected to someone from the company, I went and that was like a good starting point because a lot of them are like, hey, this is actually like one of my prospects. They're extremely friendly. So I try to prioritize the friendlies and like leverage, relationships. If I could get like a warm intro, that's always great. So I had that short list as like, hey, here's exactly what I want to get out of the conversation. So I think that's also a really important customer interviews. You have to really understand like the objective of them. And for me, starting out, it was like purely to understand what is a conversation designer? What is a typical day in the life look like? Because we were trying to really come up with what is that ideal customer that we want to go after. So for me, like I try to make it really simple for the sales rep. I wrote exactly this is what I'm trying to get out of the conversation. The one thing I'm really trying to learn. Would you mind like facilitating that intro? And they did, and that was great. And for the other ones that was totally cold, again, it's a volume game at that point where I just DM'd and I blasted. And again, I just approached it. I'm new. I really am like that. Really fascinated by this shift that's happening and this emergence of this new role. I'd love to, if you have 15 minutes of your time, I would love to just like understand like a day in the life. And I was really shocked. And I think it's just in the way you write it and it's authentic and genuine that people are willing to, they love to talk about, what they're passionate about in their role. And I think people are willing to lend a hand in that and like actually share. So I actually found it very easy, fortunately, to actually get pretty good responses. But again, prioritize like the warm relationships. Like that's a good starting point to secure those. And then just after that, it's just volume. And, you
Yeah.
kind of just track that week over week. I hope so.
So once you have all these insights, I know you mentioned before that you don't only, it's not just about getting the insights just to understand, but then you actually take action with them and share them with the
Mhm.
company. How do you make sure that all the work that you've done to talk to these people is used effectively?
Absolutely. So I always like to think that again, the objective is everybody in the company should have like a really deep understanding. And I view my team, my team's charter and also objective is also to share that internally, right? Not just with sales, but it's also everyone in the company, like even an engineer, they want to know what they're building towards and like what the impact it has. And so I really take it upon like it's about sharing and being the voice of the customer and sharing that across the company. So some, little things that we do just when we do these interviews, a lot of times we're using a recording software, like we're using Chorus, and so we're able to like create the different snippets. And through my notes, I really timestamp like, hey, this was a really good um either that they shared why they love what they love about VoiceFlow the most, or anything that is really positive to like share that we have a customer love channel on Slack. And so I always love to share the snippets at a very minimum through that channel. And my team does that too. And it's actually now spiraled into anybody that has a conversation with the customer. They share that little snippet just to make everyone feel really, motivated and pumped. And I always add like a little description, a little context, right, about what they're sharing. So at a very minimum, we want to make sure that we show that momentum. People really love to see that channel is very active, which is like a really good sign. So that's one thing at a very minimum we try to do. Um, what we also do for the sales team, which I'm starting to figure out ways, because all those clips, if we're allowed to use them, or even just like the storytelling, we try and the team, comes up with like copy, really easy ways to tell the story. Like we like to align it to, here's the common pain points or objectives that they're trying, or, the objective that they're trying to achieve. And then here are some like anecdotes, either direct quotes or a summary of what was shared, maybe in those customer research calls. And we try to make the format super easy for the reps because I think it's all about storytelling. So we'll take the clip, we'll add like a 1 to 2 sentence description of what that is, maybe also with a direct quote. And we make that really easy. Like we have a whole section within Notion where it's like different assets for the sales team. So we like to just package those insights in whatever format that we can get it in. So video, quote, summary, and we then tie it to like a particular pain point. So we like to say, hey, if you hear this from a prospect, here is some like actual social proof or just
Mm,
examples or anecdotes to
nice.
share. And we try to make it super, super simple so they can listen to it, so they can hear it directly from them, or they can use the snippet and the description, copy paste it into an email, use it on a call, throw it on a slide. So we try to, over time, figure out the formats in which they like to share stories and then try to make it as easy for them as possible. They're the front lines. They're doing it on a day-to-day basis. And I feel that in that effort to do it, it's actually created a fantastic feedback loop where others, like sales reps, are clipping their own calls and sharing that with marketing. And so now we've just created this like amazing flywheel. So it's like ongoing, and we're just trying to experiment with different formats and keep figuring out what's working and resonating. But the most important, like what I'm the most proud of, is the fact that we've created this like culture of
Yeah.
sharing insights across the organization. And we're getting inspiration and like we're experimenting with different formats to like put it out there. So even that clip we created, if we get approval to use it, we slap it on a LinkedIn ad, right? Or whatever, we put paid across it as well. So it's been awesome, just like through these little experimentations.
Yeah, I'm excited just listening to you because I'm getting a lot of ideas for how we can do something similar, just
Yeah.
across the organization. It would be really helpful. What are your tips for making the most out of interviews with people? I know you mentioned a few things. You said, "Can I just grab 15 minutes of your time, get warm intros?" 15 minutes is not a long time, so like, how do you make the most of that?
Absolutely. So I'm always like, I'll take whatever time. I won't ask for a lot, but I'll take whatever time that I can get. I think it starts with preparation. So I think a lot of times they just jump in, but I think having that discipline of really being clear on who that person is that you're speaking with. What are you hoping to learn, right? Because sometimes setting up customer interviews when you're trying to go through this, process of identifying your ICP and like the segments, right, and really forming the strategy. a very different mindset versus when you get a happy customer that wants to share their story, right? And so I think it's just depending on what that is the preparation is really key. So doing the research on the person, kind of whatever historical, if it's an existing customer, any historical notes or talking with the rep itself or the customer success point of contact and understanding who they are and also forming, somewhat about, sometimes you go in with like an assumption about what it is that they either value or what they stand for, what their pain point was. And for me, the whole purpose of that interview is to hear it directly from them to either like validate that or hopefully uncover something else that we may not have
Mhm.
thought of. So again, preparation is super key. And I think being really intentional about here's what I know so far about that customer. Here's the one thing that I'm hoping to learn from the conversation. And then you can craft like what are the 3 to 5 prompting questions. And then also knowing what am I hoping to do with this information after. I feel like then that follow because sometimes you just sit, you do the interviews and you have no idea what to do with it after. So I think having that, building that muscle and that like discipline of like being clear about after even post interview, here's what I intend to do with this information, I think
Yeah.
becomes really helpful. So it takes time, but I think once you get in a habit of it, it becomes a lot more seamless. And I now have coached my team now and we each have personal goals of like going out and talking to customers in the market and they follow that kind of similar framework, which is awesome. Um, and then I think the other thing too, which is you have to learn it, right? Is like you never, people always say like, don't lead the witness. And sometimes you're going in hoping to ask very leading questions. And instead it's how do you figure out that right balance where you're actually talking less.
Yeah.
And so I like to look at this, like I put myself to like this 80-20 rule. And a lot of times I go back to the recording and I listen back and say, did the prospect or customer talk 80% of the time? Like what was that ratio? If I find that I'm talking a lot more, then I need to figure out how do I improve that for like the next conversation. And it is, listening back and hearing the interview sometimes can be daunting, but it's the only way to learn really. And actually, I like to be super present on the calls. So I always like to figure out ways to embrace awkward silences sometimes and be okay with that. And try to figure out ways if you don't if they skirt over something that you think is really important, figuring out ways to like have them go back and re-clarify, or sometimes you have to ask questions, the same question in 3 different ways. And sometimes you
Yeah.
get 3 different responses. And that is like gold, right? Either way. And you can make sense of it after. So just kind of being a little bit more open-ended with the questions is really important. And going back sometimes, like maybe you started with a particular question in the beginning of the call and sometimes you may end with the same question, maybe rephrase a little bit differently. Now you all of a sudden have like 2 different data points to then go back and I think go back and like listen back to and then kind of document after.
Love that. Thank you, Tara. We're out of time now, but I loved this conversation. I
Yeah.
wish we could talk about it for longer because I'm really glad that we're recording this. Because
Yes.
I
Yeah.
share it with
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
team as well. Where's the best place for people to connect with you if they want to talk to you more?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm trying to be a lot more active there, so you can find me there. And then also, we're doing a lot. I'm really excited about the work that the VoiceFlow team is doing, so you can check us out at voiceflow.com.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you, Tara. And thank you to everybody who was listening or watching this today. If you liked it, you know what to do. Let us know. And see you next time.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to the next time.
And that's the end of the podcast right there. Hope you enjoyed the episode, but please don't go just yet. If you did enjoy this episode, please leave us a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It'll help other people like you discover us and get the same insights, and it would really help us out a lot. Thank you for being a loyal flying cat and for listening. See you next time.